introduction, and then we'll get rolling.
All right, thanks, Russell. Hey, everyone, thanks for joining us this morning. This is kind of one of the first in a series of webinars the association, the Alabama Landscape and Nursery Association, is doing. And this morning, Russell's invited Dr. Jeanne Lindsey she's a senior risk management with USDA's risk management agency. And she's going to talk to us about nursery crop insurance. Also, just to let you know that I am recording this presentation for folks who weren't able to make it.
Thank you, Jeremy. When we were talking prior to this meeting, Russell asked about USDA and RMA, and if I'd explain some of that. And so I do want to give a brief introduction to what we are. USDA is an agency. RMA is the USDA agency that manages the federal crop insurance program. The crop insurance then is administered through a public-private relationship. RMA, that's myself with USDA, provides the policies, the procedures, and the actuarial documents. So the same for all policies, for the county. But we don't sell or service those policies. The policies themselves are sold by agents who then can place them with one of 14 approved insurance providers. Those insurance providers have a standard reinsurance agreement with us, and they service the policies. They do the handle the underwriting, as well as they handle all the claims adjustment for it. Currently, there are 10 insurance companies that operate in Alabama. So. Let's see. This is our non-discrimination statement, which essentially says that USDA, its agencies, and all those administering its programs are prohibited from any form of discrimination in accordance with federal civil rights law and the USDA civil rights regulations and policies. In our discussions prior to this meeting, Mr. Wood told me that there are over 300 plant nurseries in Alabama. And for the 2023 crop year, we currently only have 19 of those nurseries insured. So I worked with the nursery industry either directly or indirectly since 1987. And I know that there are many production risks that nurseries face that may be mitigated through crop insurance. Our objective with this short webinar today is to provide an overview of the nursery crop insurance program and the options available to help nursery producers mitigate that production risk. We have several policies that I want to go through that could be useful for producers, nursery producers in particular. So the first is our standard nursery crop insurance program. This has been around since before I joined RMA in 2006. The coverage for this policy is based on the nursery plant inventory values. So the producer will turn in a plant inventory, and that inventory is for a given point in time. It's turned in on an annual report, and the plants are then valued at the based on the price in our eligible plant list value, or is going to be the nursery sales price in the catalog that you use for your sales. So since nursery inventories are a moving target and they constantly change throughout the year, and records are used to get to exactly where that nursery is at the time of a loss. The policy also provides a peak inventory endorsement so that you can have adequate protection when the inventory is the highest. Nursery Value Select is a privately developed product. This is a simplification of our standard policy. Nursery Value Select provides a simplified reporting, and it has coverage based on the nursery's maximum monthly values, which are reported by the producer on their monthly value report, which is filed at the sales when they take out the policy with sales closing, or when they first initiate the policy, because we can sell these policies at different times of the year. This is a pilot program, and it's been offered in several counties throughout the U.S. with the 2021 crop year. In Alabama, the NVS policy is available for nurseries located in Baldwin and Mobile. Hurricane Insurance Protection Endorsement. This is a new endorsement that came about in 2020 and is available for many of the crops and in many of the counties and regions in Valdosta Regional Office, and which Valdosta manages Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. Hurricane occurrence damage is a significant source of risk in our region. This policy has then become very popular with our producers. There must be an underlying crop insurance policy, however, in order to attach this endorsement. So if you would have to have a nursery policy in order to take the hurricane insurance. Just this week, the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation Board approved an option for tropical storm that's going to be attached with this policy or with this endorsement. And basically, what happens if a hurricane force winds are recorded in the county where your nursery is located or in an adjacent county, a payment is triggered. No forms have to be, claim has to be filed, it just happens automatically. The same now applies for the named tropical storms, which also meet the rainfall requirements. So, and I believe that is 6 inches over a 3-day period if it's associated with the named tropical storm. Whole farm revenue protections, another policy, is a general one, is available in every county in the U.S. and it does have coverage for nursery, but the nursery plants are restricted to being grown in a controlled environment system, and it's capped at a $2 million expected revenue. But this policy basically just does revenue coverage. The nursery policy is available to anyone operating a wholesale nursery that produce or markets nursery plants grown in standard nursery containers or in the field. So a wholesale nursery is going to be considered one that has at least 40% or more of the gross income from a wholesale marketing of the plants. If you are a business that receives more 60% or more of the gross income from retail sales, then would not be eligible. The standard nursery policy, there are 2 basic practices: a field grown practice and a container practice. Each one of those has different types under them that can be insured, and so you group your plants into one of those different groups. For the nursery value select policy, it also has the field grown and container practices. Some of the type classifications or groupings are different. To be insurable, a plant must meet the requirements in the policy. There are quite a few. I didn't want to list all of those here since we're just doing an overview. But one of the misconceptions, one thing that's important to know is that they must be established. So if you have a cutting that you're rooting, the cuttings are not considered insured until they have actually rooted. So the plant must have a viable root system and foliage system and be able to support its own growth. The plants that are being propagated from a mother plant must be considered established only after they have been detached from that mother plant. And grafted or budded plants, they must break dormancy before they're considered established. Plants cannot be grown for its sale as Christmas trees, so Christmas tree farms are not insurable under this policy. Stock plants are not insured, as well as if they're produced in a container that has 2 or more different genres, species, or subspecies, etc., then those are not insured. So containers that grow multiple annuals in them are not currently insured under this type of policy. They may produce edible fruits, such as strawberries or blueberries, but the plants themselves have to be offered for sale, and they're not being grown just for the harvest of the fruits. Several dates that are important for these our nursery policies. The contract change date is January 31. That's the date that we can make changes to the policy. Or so anything that's going to change as far as the terms of the policy, rates, adding different plans or special provisions, those have to be done prior to January 31st. The cancellation or termination date is May 31st. That's when the policy ends for a year. The producer can cancel prior to that date and not have to owe premium for the next year. That's important, is that once you have a policy, it is considered renewable. So it automatically renews every year unless you cancel it. And then the sales closing date is May 1st. There is a 30-day waiting period. So insurance does not attach until May 31st. And this policy sales closing date for nursery is unique. It's different than most of our other crop insurance policies, because you can take the policy out at any time during the year, but there will be that 30-day waiting period. So once all the required documents and reports are submitted, then 30 days after that, insurance will attach. Insurance will end with the final adjustment of a claim, the removal of all bare root plants from the field, or if you remove any other plant that's removed from the nursery. So if you were to dig that plant from the field and you're holding it, then in your nursery, it would still be considered insured until it's actually removed from the nursery. Or if you abandon the crop, or like I said, the May 31st is the end of the policy for that year. Misconception, I would say, would be that insurance is expensive. And it is expensive, but we are by law required to have a 1.0 loss ratio. I mean, so premiums must equal losses over a long period of time. The federal government will subsidize the premium, so the producer is not paying for all of that risk that's associated for that county and for that crop. So this little table here, the first row is coverage levels. And so we have 50% and 5% increments up to 75% coverage level. Second row is the premium subsidy. That's what the federal government will pay, or their portion that they will pay of that premium. And then this third row is the producer share. So producer doesn't pay the, like I said, the whole premium because of the subsidy. For example, at the 50% coverage level, producers only paying 33% of that premium. And at the 75% coverage level, they're paying 45%. For hurricane insurance, there's a flat subsidy, it's at 65%. And for the whole farm revenue protection, it can be up to 80% of subsidy. That's depending on how many insured commodities that you have and what coverage levels you're taking. The basic policies are catastrophic coverage, we call it CAT, and buy-up. So the catastrophic coverage, that's going to be 50% of price selection, or really the value of your nursery crop, and 50% coverage level. There is no premium associated with that for the producer. However, there is an administrative fee of $655, and that is by the insured practice. And those insured practices were container grown and field grown. The buy-up policy will have 100% of the price selection, or 100% of the plant nursery value. And it goes into 50 to 75% coverage levels with the 5% increments. Hurricane and tropical storm endorsement. This goes anywhere from where your coverage level was that you selected up to 95% of the coverage level. So that'd be 95% of your value of your crop. So if you chose a 50% coverage level for your base policy, or even if you had a CAT policy at 50% coverage level, then it would go up to the 95. You can choose up to 95%. We cover losses associated with adverse weather. And this is primarily going to be the cause of loss that we would have in our regions, and hail, ice storms, tornadoes would certainly be damaging. Hurricane damage is a primary cause of concern. It also covers fire, wildlife, and earthquake and volcano eruption, which are not any kind of risks that we have here in the Southeast. If it's due to an insurable cause of loss, it will also cover the loss of the plant value with your inability to market that plant. This would be an example that might be poinsettias. If for some insurable cause of loss, you weren't able to market your poinsettias during that marketing season, then they would be covered. Failure of the irrigation and water supply, if your hurricane were to damage that, or failure or reduction of the power supply. The policy, however, does not cover insect or disease infestation unless there's no known control for that pest, or it does not cover the inability to market a plant if someone refuses to buy it or accept that your load, or if there's a boycott or a quarantine comes in place. It does not cover cold temperatures if the eligible plant list says that cold plants have to be protected, and they'll list what type of protection they're required to have. It could be cold frame, or it may even be heated greenhouse. Where to find information? The best place to go, other than an agent, is to go to our website, rma.usda.gov. We have a wealth of information there about the nursery policies, as well as all of our other policies. For nursery in particular, you can go to the topics section, and under topics, you can select nursery, and this is just a partial example of what's on that nursery crop insurance sheet. You can find underwriting guides, fact sheets. You can download the software or the eligible plant list system. You can get the policy information is down below, and all the links to the policies. Same kind of things available for the Nursery Value Select. And under tools, I don't have a screenshot for that, but for the tools, you can go there to find all the actuarial documents. They'll go to the counties themselves, and you can pull up your county and see what it would cost for crop insurance there. This is meant to be a quick overview of the crop insurance program for nursery and what's available for nursery producers. At this time, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer those.
Thanks, Jeanne. Do we have any questions?
I've got a question. This is Adam Rabinowitz. I'm an ag economist at Auburn University and with Extension at ACES.
Okay.
In particular about the tropical storm coverage that's, from what I understand, very, very new, and actually haven't seen a lot of details, but I've heard a few things about it. What, sorry, I'm in the car. What qualifies as, sort of eligibility to collect on that tropical storm? What is it? Just tropical storm winds, or is there a rain factor as well? What is that qualification?
Okay. Well, tropical storms are classified by NOAA based on their wind speeds. And so it does need to be a named tropical storm. And so there will be a wind factor to it. But within 3 days, I think it's one day before, the day of, and the day after, there's a rainfall requirement. So that would be 6 inches. So if 6 inches fall in that 3-day period, then that would qualify that area, that county, or any adjacent county to be trigger for a payment.
So is that an and? So essentially a tropical storm designation by NOAA and 6 inches of rainfall within the 3-day period?
Yes, it would be both of those requirements.
Okay.
And
because a moving storm that's in just kind of tropical storm, winds just below a hurricane, can do some significant damage without the rain.
Right.
So
the way the policy is set up right now, and the way they're introducing it right now, is there is a rainfall requirement or criteria that has to be met also. And after the storm passes through, you can still have rain that lingers for days. So that's a possibility too. Oh, I know we faced that situation in South Carolina several years ago.
Sure. Yeah. It very much depends on the speed of the storm, and sometimes when they get to that tropical storm point, they do kind of linger, and they'll just kind of circle around there and not really move out of the area. But it's an interesting balance. I was a little surprised, and I've heard others as well express some concern about the "and" factor in that, but I hadn't actually seen any documentation on it yet.
Okay.
So thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, the documentation is already up on our website. So if you want to go to our website, you can pull any of that. I'm sure it should be in the announcements, as well as they'll have, go to the actual policy and procedure for that. Get some more information.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, this
Yeah, Jeremy, go ahead.
Brian, did you have a question?
Yeah, on the we did the hurricane buy-up last year. One of those slides that I think what we did was we had the catastrophic coverage plus a buy-up for hurricane.
Okay.
One of those slides, it looked like you had to have 65% coverage. Was that on the base level, or was that?
No. No, you can have if you have the cat level of coverage, then you're going to be valued at 55% of the value of the nursery at the 50% coverage level. So essentially it's 27.5% of the value of the nursery. So that's the maximum. But then you have a deductible. So the hurricane coverage should have been for that deductible from the 50 up to 95 if you took the maximum.
Okay, I see. All right. And then I believe on the hurricane, it has to be in your county or the next county over.
Right.
Is it the same on the tropical storm?
Yes, it is. But
Okay.
the tropical storm, they have a 50% payout of the liability for that's insured. And if a second tropical storm came, you would get the other 50%. Or if a hurricane came and then a tropical storm, well, the hurricane would pay out 100% first time, and that's the end of it. There's no more than 100% of the liability.
Okay.
So if we get, I know in Florida back in 2005, I think there were about 3 or 4 hurricanes across the state. Well, in that case, there would only be one payment. I don't want to see any more of those years.
Yeah, Jeremy, Philip Hunter here. So a question going back to your catalog, and I guess your catalog prices, your inventory report. So you're using your catalog to establish a value. Is that correct?
Yes, as long as that price is not above our eligible plant list price. So it's going to be the lower of. Now we do have an endorsement to use your own price if you have all your sales receipts to support that.
Okay, so in our situation, and I'm sure with other wholesale nurseries, you could have multiple price points for one plant or size, and that could be a list price. It could be a discount based on quantity. It could be a discount based on the customer and their history. So when it comes to setting that actual price, if you're using your pricing, there's some confusion about what price would stand up in an audit. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I do not know exactly how to answer you that on that particular situation right now, but I can definitely see the confusion. At different times of the year, you can have different prices even. The beginning of the season might be higher than the end of the season. And like you said, with the customers, but generally it's supposed to be the lowest price that you sell your plant for.
Well, generally that would be a good answer. I mean, I can understand that. I mean, you gotta set a price at some point, but it's also subject to what you said. Is it an average or regional prices? Is that what that was?
You start with the original price, but if you have a plant discount list, then it can go to that plant discount list price.
Okay. On your revenue plan, you mentioned a controlled environment. So is that going to limit that plan to greenhouse production, or what is the controlled environment?
Yeah, controlled environment can be greenhouse.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Jeannie, I had a question about the inventory list. And so I understand y'all have, I guess, some software where that has to be uploaded into.
Yes.
And how does that work? Is it like rolling throughout the years? Some nurseries, especially container nursery, will be adding to their inventory, throughout the year, not just one time. So how does that work?
I'm not quite sure if I understand the question. Like,
I guess how are you able to update the inventory throughout the year as it changes, or is it a once a year kind of a thing?
He's talking about revising the PIVR.
Yeah. Okay. You can revise. We have one revision for the throughout the year, as well as you feel like there's going to be a peak inventory. You can have an endorsement for that, and to ensure just during that peak season, like maybe spring, you have a lot more plant material than you would have in the summer. So you can Matt, do you have something that you can add to that?
No, that's it. You're allowed to revise your plant inventory value report upwards. You can't revise it downwards is the other thing. So you can only increase the inventory.
But the way that you, if you want to decrease, you can ensure at a lower level throughout the year, but have that peak inventory for when you most need it or when your nursery's full.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Jeannie, this is Russell. I wanted to kind of follow up on where I think Philip was going about determining the value of the plant. So you said y'all have a spreadsheet or information, I guess, on your website that values these plants. And so his catalog may say one thing, but what your report says is really the bottom line of what it's going to be paid out, a percentage of.
Right, unless you have sales records to support that price, there's an endorsement you can take out that would use your actual price, but it can't be, if you haven't sold it, that tree at $150 yet, but you put it in your catalog and we're valuing it at $125, then you're going to go with $125.
Right, but I think he's asking, how is that 125 determined? Is that a national average of that plant type and size? Is it regional? Is it state-based?
When you take out a policy, you're required to turn in a catalog, and we submit those catalogs to a company that's maintaining the software for us. So they're taking everyone's catalogs and they're seeing what the general price is for the region, for the area, for that plant. And it does change by location. So, but we personally do not maintain that. We have an independent contractor that's maintaining that system. The new policy, Nursery Value Select, that's based on the producer's value that they declare. This is the value of my crop for this month, or could you do monthly estimates of what that's going to be? It doesn't use that price list, but it does have to be supported by your catalogs and your sales prices.
Thank you. And one other follow-up question. You'd mentioned wildlife in there, had a picture of a deer. I know one tree grower down in the southern part of the state has issues with hogs, and they rub up against the trees and make the trunk unappealing from an aesthetics perspective of sellability. So is that something that would qualify under this?
Yes, it would. That's considered wildlife damage. And that's a problem with many crops in our region, not just Alabama, but also in Georgia.
I want to ask a follow-up question on that wildlife. Is wildlife damage, though, covered on its own, or does that have to be subsequent to some other type of qualifying event?
No, that's just one of the causes of loss that's acceptable for damage, or that would be covered by the policy.
Okay, because I know, like, for pests, that's often, tied to, to excessive rainfall or excessive drought or, some other type of qualifying event in that respect. That's why I was.
Yeah, it may be for the pest, because we do have a requirement that if there are control measures available, then you have to use those control measures. And so we're not going to cover disease if it's we're having fungicide or that will cover that or control it. But if you're in a situation where you have another cause of loss, like the excessive rain, then and that would essentially keep the disease from being covered because you couldn't spray it enough, then that might be what you're talking about, where you have another cause of loss. So it would be covered more under the excessive rain situation.
Okay.
Philip, did you have another question?
Yes, on the Nursery Value Select, do y'all anticipate it moving out of a pilot program, or when that may be, out of just the 2 counties that are in our state?
I don't have any information on that. I know they have expanded some other counties in Florida, for the 2023 crop year. So if there are some counties that are interested in that, in Alabama, where we have some, nursery production, then let us know, because we can request that they maybe expand that for trial and pilot in that county.
Yeah, you
Okay.
just piggybacking on that. I spoke with Russell a couple of weeks ago about that, and maybe it's something that the organization can get together some of the members that have it, see if they like it, explain it to some of their colleagues, and if there's interest, just send us a letter or an email or something like that, and we can push that up the ladder.
And again, here's our contact information. Just send us an email, like Matt said.
I also wanted to circle back, Jeannie, on revisions. You're actually able to revise your inventory twice a year under the base policy. So, your spring season's coming up, you're bringing in a bunch of propagated plants, you could increase then, or, for whatever, or even after a storm comes through and you got to restock, you can revise then again too. So you could do that up to 2 times without taking the endorsement. You take the endorsement, you can do it 3 times.
Thank you, Matt.
So Jeannie, you'd also mentioned that Christmas trees were not covered. Jeremy does a lot of work with the Christmas tree growers, so I'm just curious, is there anything out there that they are eligible for?
Whole farm revenue.
I think that, and there's maybe a CAP program, or does that sound right?
Oh, you might be referring to a NAP program. That's
NAP,
managed.
okay, NAP.
Yeah. Yeah, that comes from the Farm Service Agency. It's our
Okay.
sister agency.
I got you.
Yeah, NAP covers anything that we don't offer an insurance policy for, Jeremy.
I see. I guess because maybe Christmas trees or some people consider that a forestry crop, I guess.
Well, we're only interested in sales of whole plants. So
Right.
like we don't cover cut flowers or cut ferns or Christmas trees. You
Right.
got to sell the roots and the shoots.
I got you.
So Jeremy, you may have to jog my memory here, but I remember there was an issue with a grower down there whose plants got blown over by the wind that were field grown. They may have been Christmas trees, but for purposes of this discussion, let's say they weren't. Do you recall that? And what was the issue there with them getting coverage because he was trying to save the plant?
Well, he was in the NAP program, and I think he's working with American Hort right now to maybe get that changed a little bit, but they insure you only on the trees that are destroyed or there's mortality on, and he wanted insurance to pay for him saving his trees. He didn't want to lose the trees. And I think that's something he's interested in and working on getting changed.
Okay.
See, with our policy, we also we also offer a rehabilitation endorsement that actually helps with the cost of rehabilitating your plants too.
That's interesting. Rehabilitation. Well, does anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, one more. Is I think you mentioned, are there 10 agents or agencies in Alabama that offer crop insurance?
There are 10 companies that are licensed or have approval with us, and are also operate in Alabama. So they're with the standard reinsurance agreement, but there could be multiple agents. An agent will be independent of the insurance company, and they'll just have an agency agreement with that company to place their insurance with it. So the agents are the ones actually doing the selling. The company will then take a policy and do the underwriting and then manage that policy as far as any indemnities claims that go with it.
Is there a listing of agents in Alabama, or Jeremy or Russell? Do y'all know agents that are familiar with the specialty crops, nursery crops?
Jeannie,
We
could you share your screen and show the agent locator tool?
Well, let's see. I'm not sure if I can get to that quickly, Matt.
Well, we have on our website under the tools link that Jeannie showed earlier, there's a link for, it's called an agent locator tool, and you put in your address and it will spit out all the crop insurance agents in a certain radius you select. That's one way to go about
Is my
finding an
screen
agent.
sharing?
Yes, we're seeing
Okay.
it now. Very good.
Actually, I think that's Russell's.
Yeah, but that's what you want to see, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's it.
Right. So there's an agent locator tool that you can go to that's underneath tools. So just
We're
click.
already there, Jeannie.
Oh, okay. Russell took over. Okay.
Yeah. So go to find local insurance agent. And you can put in any address and it'll spit them out.
There you go.
Yeah. And like Jeannie said earlier, one thing to keep in mind with crop insurance agents is the only thing one can offer you over another is service. It all costs the same because it's federally subsidized. So that's just something that I always tell producers when we give talks like this, is service is the only thing one agent can offer you over another.
So last question that I've got on this, and Jeannie, I think touched on it, or maybe I misunderstood earlier about 27.5%, but it sounds like, when you buy these policies, you choose, what level between the 50 and 75%, but ultimately you're never going to get paid 100% of what your crop value, catalog value is. It's going to be a percentage of that based on what you buy. But even
Yes.
then, something sounded like it was a percentage of the
Yeah.
percent. So that if it,
Okay. That's the CAT policy, for which there's no premium charge, just the, county administrative charge. And so that is at a 55% of your nursery value times 50% coverage level. So if you multiply the 55% times 50%, that comes out to 27.5. So essentially you're insuring 27.5% of your nursery value.
Okay, so really you may be not even getting enough to offset the input costs you had in producing the plant, but you're getting something back out of it, but you're not
Right.
making up that
You had
revenue that you lost.
Right. I mean, if there's a total destruction, so something like hurricane came and destroyed your nursery, or a tornado coming through. I mean, that's the CAT policy. I mean, now you are not required to have insurance for disaster payments. So I think that was one of the misconceptions you asked me to talk about. So disaster payments come through the Farm Service Agency, and those are declared by Congress. So there's no guarantee that there will ever be a disaster payment. But if they do declare one, you're not required to have crop insurance, but there could be a linkage requirement to receive that payment, which would mean that you have to buy up coverage for the next 2 years. Generally, it's what they've done in the past. So if you took the nursery disaster coverage, you may have to take a 65% coverage level policy for 2 years. And so you would have to weigh those costs against your payment.
Okay. Are there any kind of like Excel worksheets or anything on the website where somebody could plug in, hey, if this happened, here's what my payout would look like for a certain percentage of loss?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, we have economists on the line. I'm not sure if he's still here. Adam?
I am. Unfortunately, I didn't quite hear the question. What was that? I'm sorry.
I was just curious if there were any kind of, an Excel worksheet basically where somebody could plug in, well, here's what I paid in my premium. Here's the total value of all the plants on my nursery. And, if I had a loss of, 40% of my plants, it would kind of spit out numbers to tell you, what your payout would be. Like, how difficult would it be? I don't know that that's useful or not. I feel like if I was growing that I might want to run some numbers and see like, all right, well, if I'm paying, 1,000 or 5,000 or what, I don't know the numbers to get this policy, like what's it going to ultimately do for me?
Sure. I think that's an excellent question. I don't know of anything offhand that has done that on the nursery side. I feel like I've seen something at times on the crop side, like the row crop side, but I'll certainly kind of take a look and see what that would involve, and if anybody that I know, has worked on anything like that, I can let you know.
Or a graduate student project.
Well, I mean, this might help somebody decide if, what does it look like between the 50% coverage policy and a 75% coverage? That might help them make decisions if they choose to buy, on what level to buy.
Absolutely. And I think also the addition of, these hurricane, endorsements and such at these different levels, what does that actually do under those scenarios?
Yeah. Awesome. That's all I got.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, when you look at the hurricane endorsement, you can see that especially in counties close to the coast, like Baldwin and Mobile, the coverage is actually pretty expensive because it's based strictly on the probability of hurricane. It's not based on any performance of a policy or claims in the past. It's the probability of a hurricane affecting that county or an adjacent county and triggering a payment. So, but since it's subsidized at 65% by the federal government, that definitely helps your situation. Makes it more affordable.
Yeah. Well, and I know the first year that it was offered on the row crop side in Alabama, it had a loss ratio, I think about 4. I mean, it paid significantly. It made a lot of people happy when those hurricanes came through.
Right. And the nice thing about that is that you don't have to wait for a claim. You don't have to wait for an adjuster. It's an immediate payment. So within a month of the hurricane, they usually have all the data and those payments can be made. So it's timely payments. And that was one of the objectives of the coverage, is to make money available timely and not have to wait a whole year or 6 months before you can get an indemnity payment.
Right, or more than a year for some of these additional ad hoc allocations that come about. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, I just want to say thanks again to Dr. Jeanne Lindsey. She's a senior risk management with USDA's Risk Management Agency, and also Matt Wilkin, who is the deputy director for RMA in our region. Thank you both for having us. This has been really great.
Yeah, appreciate all the questions and anything we can do to assist spreading the word throughout Alabama. Nurserymen, we'll be glad to do that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. If anybody has any questions, Jeremy and Russell have our contact information.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.
you.